There's a pretty awesome theme in Star Wars that teaches us this path to mastery, right? The relationship of the Padawan to the Jedi Master. It takes quite a long time for somebody to go from the Luke Skywalker in the first Star Wars. If you guys have seen The Mandalorian, there's kind of a recreation of Luke as the Jedi after Return of the Jedi. And they couldn't be farther apart. But contained in these two versions, we have kind of the embodiment of one of the core principles of weightlessness training, which is the Tao of weightlessness. This idea that we're all torn between two selves, a self that is motivated by payoff today or connection today, essentially that presence-seeking self, and then the other version of ourselves, which is forward-looking, forward-thinking, looking for payoff in the future. And these two are cross purposes because we don't always have the luxury of fighting for the future while maintaining that state of presence, right? By definition, if we're doing something that exceeds our capacity, that creates an element of stress in our minds or bodies, it's very difficult to remain present, right? We tend to either escape. If we're working out, we try to put that mind somewhere else. Or if we're trying to learn, study, invest, then we are solely focused on the abstract and projections for the future. So it's very difficult to bring these two into the present, right? I wasn't modeling this after Star Wars necessarily. This is a very old kind of Taoist principle. But Star Wars embodies it perfectly. And when we have, Luke in this reimagination from The Mandalorian, we have him appear for maybe a total of 10 minutes at the end. Hopefully, if you guys haven't seen it, spoiler alert, maybe don't listen any further until you do. But Luke shows up, to find this kind of, what seems to be the child of Yoda, to rescue him in a way. And he just works through these dark soldiers, these robots, right, as if they're nothing. And one of these robots was enough to challenge the Mandalorian and almost take him out. And there were something like 50 or 100 of them on the ship. And Luke just makes easy work of them. And he does so without it even stressing him in the slightest, right? And he's got complete mastery of the Force, one of the strongest Jedis ever. Amazing thing to kind of see if you're into that sort of thing. But the Luke that we saw in the first Star Wars was, well, a bit of a whiny bitch. Pardon my French. He was complaining about everything. Wants quick payoff, complaining about the challenges in training, and when he's learning with Yoda, everything is a struggle, right? And as he's trying to assimilate and grow the Force within himself, there's this obvious and real conflict between him against an external force, an external obstacle, right? And this is a great metaphor for all of us on the path to professionalism, mastery, competence, a lot of stuff in that domain. And I feel like there are a lot of people that focus on the theme today that what we need to do is try to alleviate all stress. And we need to accept ourselves fully as we are if we're going to move forward in a way that, where we feel a sense of alignment. But anybody, especially those in the athletic domain, the military, anybody that's pursued a high degree or something that we could even call like a path towards craftsmanship. If you're a surgeon, if you're a doctor, if you're somebody that has a highly specialized skill, everybody knows this intuitively. You don't get the one without the other, right? The challenge and the stress and the conflict is baked in until it's not. And so it seems like there's this movement that wants to bypass this process of internal conflict, stress confrontation, right? The overcoming of these boundaries or hurdles along the way. And just say, well, we're perfect as we are, and we can just sense the way that we kind of connect with this vision and go toward what lights us up and avoid that which makes us feel not so good in the moment. But there's this romance in this story, right? And we feel it because we, even if you're not a big Star Wars fan, it's hard not to appreciate the relationship between Yoda and Luke, right? Or any of the other master-apprentice relationships in Star Wars, because there's something about us that understands those wise old masters that have done the hard work, that know the skill, that know the craft, that can take us from where we are farther. Well, we understand and appreciate that level of mastery, and we understand that they might know things outside of our realm of comprehension, right? Recently, I watched an episode of Hell's Kitchen, and Gordon Ramsay is, if you're not aware, he's an obvious master of culinary skills, right? He's a true master. It comes out in everything that he does, but he gets misunderstood a lot because he can be a belligerent jerk with some of the ways that he relates to the people that he's trying to coach or facilitate throughout his show. There was one guy in it that said, they had like a 10-minute face-to-face, and Gordon kind of gave him some feedback. And the guy said, Gordon is who he is. If he tells me to wipe my ass a different way, he might know something. And so much was embodied in that, quick little comment that was like, well, yeah, this isn't a process where we know everything from the outset. We can't. We're growing. We're not static individuals. We haven't arrived anywhere. But this is a long-winded way of saying that we can kind of intuitively perceive that there's that realm where no longer is there conflict between the person and the thing, right? Where being the surgeon, being the doctor, being the military man, or being the Jedi, where there is not this conflict, internal conflict, me versus the world, trying to overcome an external barrier. And what we get at the end is the craftsman, the Jedi, the master, right? Somebody that is able to actually operate in what we perceive moments of high stress, moments of performance, but they don't feel the conflict we feel throughout the learning process. Why am I even talking about this? Why does this matter? Probably should have framed it better from the beginning. It matters to me a lot because throughout my coaching processes, I find that, first of all, there are those people that bring up this issue of, well, what about acceptance? Why do I need to feel this internal struggle and the anxiety of training and the pressure of trying to develop myself? Why can't I just accept myself? Well, fair enough. If you have no ambition, if you don't want to acquire any new skills, if you don't want to perform in domains that require more of you than you might be able to deliver on any one day. If the target is to eat bonbons on the sofa and watch sitcoms, fair enough. I think that approach is perfectly well suited. But if you want to perform in a domain that fits any of those markers, right? High stress, maybe it exceeds your level of skill to a certain degree, then there's no way around needing to cultivate a higher threshold to stress. And this isn't a local phenomenon, right? This is something that is holistic, it's global. It can be trained in specificity through somebody's specific domain. But it can also be addressed, like in the mind-body domain, in a global sense where we do one thing that impacts all things, right? General strength and conditioning is totally misunderstood. Some people think it's for certain people and they're good at it, but I'm not really. This kind of thing isn't for me. Or they might say, well, sure, marathon running is for some people, but not for everybody. To which I say, well, of course. I mean, we all have different proclivities, different skills, but the question isn't, is it for them or not? The question is, can we all get better at meaningful things? If we can get better at meaningful things that actually stress the nervous system, stress the body in certain progressive and measurable ways, these are global aspects of development. That's a nervous system that can be prepared for and accommodate more stress. It's not just deadlifting or running, right? This is something that has massive impact. And the guys in the Flow Genome Project who are focused on these ideas of flow states and actually designing and orienting around that, great concept, but even they stipulate that, well, in order to hit flow, you need to be in environments that maybe exceed your level of skill by about 4%. It's like, okay, great. Well, how do we do that? I mean, what's 4% in the real world? I mean, there are so many variables and life is uncertain and volatile. And it's kind of like, well, we know that we can exceed our skill by 4%. Well, probably not. Probably never, in fact. But it does contain this idea that there might be a ratio or a relationship between competence or skill and the extremity of stress. And we just don't get the luxury of saying, yeah, I'm just going to avoid it altogether. Well, no, it's like, well, on this path to development, if I want to, progress in a way that might lead me on a path toward mastery, then I need to accept that the process to get there might be laden with those types of confrontations that I described earlier, right? This idea that I'm struggling or resisting something ongoing. And that's part of the process because I need to acquire the skills that allow me to do that proficiently over time and not just magically luck into being superhuman, being a Jedi, being a craftsman or an expert or a master of something. And so while the end game is this merging, right, of the Tao of weightlessness where we've got stress and sensitivity today and tomorrow that are separated in terms of our perception, in the mind-body of the master, there's no conflict. You can be in a high-stress situation, you can be in a performance-oriented environment and still maintain your center. but you can't expect to get there without the trials and tribulations along the way that actually allow you to cultivate this skill. In short, and to recall one of the core weightlessness premises, we must add weight to unburden. Assuming that we can be unburdened and at peace without going through the shit is unreasonable, right? And there's that old saying that there is no gold without the dragon. There is a relationship between these two things, right? The payoff and the effort that is totally unavoidable. So learning, rather than to avoid those stressors, how do we embrace them, reorient them, take on that challenge, knowing that it's what's going to prepare us to be that other person at the end of the day, that Luke Skywalker of The Mandalorian, and not that Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. Yeah, so I guess that's a bit of a reflection piece, but my thought for today. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts on it. It's something that could probably be expounded upon. I think it's a really interesting topic, and if this doesn't hit you today, no problem. But I'm bringing it up because it is a common theme, and I think that it might resonate with a few people, and maybe it'll resonate with you. How do you embrace those stressors that can allow you to become that vision of self versus try to avoid them along the way? Tough one. See you in the next video. Be weightless.